All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we are going to get into talking about the Giants falling to 0-2 despite scoring 3 touchdowns in the game, losing to the Commanders, a team that they have owned for years now. They lose 21-18. Now, the reason for that, one of the main reasons for that. So, I want to take you back to the opening kickoff. So I got the game on. I'm watching it in here. And Austin Eckler takes it to the house for a touchdown. And I was laughing. I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. This is just hilarious. And what ends up happening is that gets called back because I get a legal block in the back, I think. Because there's always a flag on a kickoff or a punt. How many times do you see that? But, of course, there was a penalty, so the Giants caught a break, and there was no touchdown. Commanders ended up scoring no touchdowns in the game. But what ends up happening on the play is Graham Gano, their kicker, gets hurt. And he's out for the game. Out. Now, he was already, dealing with a little bit of a groin injury going into this game. He was hurt all week. But, the Giants didn't seem like it was that big of a concern. And they felt like he was going to be okay for this game and that nothing was going to happen. However, that was not the case. He was out for the rest of the game, and the Giants had no kicker. So what they ended up doing was they had their punter attempt an extra point, and he ended up missing it. And from that point on, the Giants just, when they would score a touchdown, the remaining 2 touchdowns, they did not attempt another extra point. They just kept lining up and going for 2, and they didn't convert ever. And ultimately, that led to a loss because the Commanders, they kicked 7 field goals. By the way, the Commanders had a new kicker in this game. So they picked up Austin Seibert, and he went 7 of 7. So if you had him in fantasy, you were very happy with his production. And looking at the statistics of the game, well, actually, before I get into that, so the Giants had the ball late in the game. The game was tied, and they were well in the field goal range. The problem was they don't have a kicker, so they went for it on 4th and 4, and Daniel Jones, threw a nice pass to Malik Neighbors on the sideline. He was wide open, and Malik Neighbors dropped the ball. Commanders, they took over. Jaden Daniels, second play of that drive, he connects with Noah Brown for 34 yards. They get into field goal range. They get to the Giants' 12, and Seibert kicks the game-winning field goal. Now, let's get into the statistics for the game. Daniel Jones went 16 to 28, 178 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Was better than he was last week or in week 1 against the Vikings, but still not great. The Giants ran the ball for 129 yards. Devin Singletary had a nice game, 95 yards on the ground and a touchdown. He did fumble in the game. But Malik Neighbors, he was great in this game. He was one of the bright spots of this Giants loss. And the Giants look like they have a good player with him. And you saw this a little bit beforehand. But yeah, 10 receptions. He was targeted 18 times, 127 yards, and a touchdown. You would like to see some of the other guys getting the ball too. I mean, you can't just be relying on one guy on offense, which is kind of what the Giants were doing, in previous seasons with Saquon Barkley. Now Malik Neighbors picks up where Barkley left off. Well, the other thing too you could say is, well, Neighbors dropped the ball and Barkley dropped the ball on Monday, so that's nice. But yeah, Darius Slayton had 3 receptions for 33 yards. Wan'Dale Robinson had 2 receptions for 18 yards, also had a touchdown. Neighbors also had a touchdown in this game as well. It says it right there. But The Giants as a team, though, they did get 5 sacks in the game. Jason Pinnock had 2. Micah McFadden had 1. Drew Phillips, their corner, had 1. And Bobby Okereke had 1 as well. But the Giants got absolutely destroyed in the ground game. The Commanders ran the ball for 215 yards. Brian Robinson Jr. had 133 yards rushing. Jane Daniels had 44. Austin Eckler had 38. Their leading receiver was Zach Ertz with 62 yards. Yeah. The Giants' defense has been a disappointment to start off this year. And they got to figure it out. And, this season is quickly unraveling. For me, their season is pretty much over. I feel like they're going to win a game at some point, but they got a brutal stretch coming up. I mean, they got the Browns this week in Cleveland against a very good defense. They got the Cowboys who own them on Thursday night the following week, which is going to be a short week. Who else do they have? They're in Seattle, home against the Bengals, home against the Eagles, at the Steelers. And, when I used to do my radio show at school, my friend and I would do a goof segment. It wasn't really a segment, but we would just do it anyways because it was funny. Where are the wins coming from? That was what the segment was called. Now, a lot of people say that. It's not like, we created this brand new segment. It was kind of a spoof segment because, it was funny. And where are the wins coming from for the Giants? Now, believe it or not, I actually do think that they could beat the Browns. I think they could because the Browns' offense has still not been great. However, you could say, well, the Giants' offense has not been great. It looked a little bit better, but that's because of Malik Neighbors. And they were going up against a team that Daniel Jones does well against. They couldn't win that game. Now, what I don't understand is how the Giants didn't suit up another kicker. And I know there are people that have different opinions on it, but if you know that your guy is hurt, and Brian Dable was not having it when he was, taking questions on this topic. He was not having it. But you should have another kicker prepared just in case Graham Gano gets hurt. But they figured, we don't need to worry about it. Well, guess what? This costed the Giants the game. If they have a kicker, they're winning this game. But they didn't. And because of that, they are now 0-2. Now, could the offense have been better? Could Daniel Jones have had better stats? I mean, again, only passed for 158 yards. Not great. But he's not the reason they lost. And Malik Neighbors was really beating himself up over the drop. Not his fault either that they lost. You know what? If the Giants had a kicker, they would have kicked the field goal. And then, you know what? Yeah, the game probably would have been tied anyways because the Giants' defense can't stop anything. But you at least have a kicker. And you wouldn't have put Malik Neighbors in that situation to drop the pass. But you know what? This is kind of what happened in 2021. You lose an ugly game in week 1, and then you look like you're going to win a game in week 2 against the Commanders, because that's the last time. No, it's not. Well, that's the last time the Commanders beat the Giants in Washington. Because the Giants then played them the last game of the regular season in 2021, and that was when Jake Fromm started. Joe Judge did the back-to-back. QB sneaks on their own 4, which made no sense. But it was the same thing. The Commanders kicked the game-winning field goal, although it was a little bit different because the Commanders initially missed the field goal, and the Giants won, but Dexter Lawrence was offsides, and they got to kick again, and they ended up winning. This one, the Giants scored 3 touchdowns, and the Commanders scored 7 field goals, and they win. And it's funny how you always say you got to score 7. You don't want to be kicking field goals. Well, that's all the Commanders did. The Giants, all they did was score touchdowns, and all the Commanders did was kick field goals, and the Commanders won. And the Giants became the first team in NFL history to score 3+ touchdowns, allow no touchdowns, and lose. So it's amazing. They continue to find ways to lose games. Just when you think you've seen it all. And look, when Daniel Jones loses to a team that he always beats, that's when you know, yeah, this season is really going nowhere. And I mean, I guess I really drank the Hard Knocks Kool-Aid. Like, I was like, you know what? They're not going to be a total embarrassment this year. They're going to be a competitive team. They're going to lose some tough games. They're going to finish with a losing record. I mean, it's not like I had them making the playoffs. I still had them, with a losing record, but I gave them 7 wins. 7 wins right now looks impossible. And it's not like the Commanders look great. I think Jane Daniels, he looks like he's going to be a good player for them, but they don't look great. Their defense is bad. But the Giants still couldn't beat him. So, where is this season going to go? Now you're going up against a Browns team where, yes, they've struggled offensively, but you're going up against a good defense. And, the Giants' defense hasn't looked great. Giants' defense does not look great. They did get to the quarterback this game, but they still gave up a ton of yards. You look at the box score, the Commanders had 425 yards of total offense. Giants had 304. They had 69 plays to the Giants' 51. Yeah, it's not looking good. And, you already got people saying, Shane Bowen's defense, people are talking about, why did they get rid of Wink Martindale? That's another Brian Dable question, It's been disappointing. Malik Neighbors has not been. Singletary's had a better game. I know he fumbled, but, at least he got it going a little bit. This is a must-win for the Giants on Sunday if they're going to want to try to, salvage this season. Because if you go to 0-3, I mean, then it's going to continue to spiral out of control. And you really think about Brian Dable and his job security. Like, if this season goes really bad and off the rails, what's going to happen? So, because the Giants have a lot more issues than just the quarterback. And he wasn't the reason they lost. But yeah, that's basically it. The Commanders, they pick up a win, and they take on the Bengals on Monday night. One of the 2 games. So, yeah, they're 1-1. They're well, you got every team in the NFC East at 1-1 except for the Giants, who are 0-2. So, all right, we are going to take our final break of the show, and then when we come back, we will talk about all the 2-0 teams. And, just talk about some surprises from the group. I'll give you some of my takes on those teams when we come back from our final break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.